Hello, my friend. Welcome to the show. First time here? Then subscribe and spread the video love. It's one of the best ways to help my channel grow. I'd also love to know your city and country, so drop them in the comments. Every message counts. Let's get started. 10 days, that was all she said she needed. 10 days to reflect on our marriage and figure out where we stood. When she sat across from me last Tuesday night with that heavy, deliberate look in her eyes, I already knew what was coming. Women don't ask for space to save a relationship. They ask for it to test drive a replacement. The thing is, I'm not the type to panic. I don't grovel. I listen, I evaluate, and I move with precision. So when she finished her neatly practiced monologue about needing time and distance, I just gave a short nod and replied, "All right, 10 days." The expression that crossed her face was worth a photograph. She'd braced herself for tears, pleading, maybe some desperate promise to change. What she got instead was ice-cold acceptance. I could see her mind working, trying to decide if this was some kind of manipulation tactic. It wasn't. I was already 3 moves ahead. "You look surprised," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Isn't this exactly what you asked for?" She mumbled something about not expecting me to be so calm. Of course she didn't. In her version of events, I was supposed to unravel at the thought of losing her. What she didn't grasp was that you can't lose someone who is already mentally checked out. The next morning, I stood in the doorway and watched her pack. Her movements had the speed and efficiency of someone who'd been preparing for this for weeks. She knew exactly where she was going, what to bring, and which car to take. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment need for space. It was a planned exit. "I'll be at my friend's place," she announced without meeting my eyes. "The one downtown?" I knew exactly who she meant. The single friend who'd been filling her head with ideas about living your best life, not settling, and finding yourself. The same friend who had been nudging her to go out more, change how she dressed, and pick apart our marriage bit by bit. "Makes sense," I said, still looking at my coffee. "Right in the middle of all the action." She hesitated at that, bag in hand, scanning my face for a reaction. But I'd learned a long time ago, showing vulnerability to someone already halfway out the door only makes them walk faster. Before stepping outside, she turned back. "We should probably avoid contact during this time," she said. "You know, to really think things through." There it was, the real objective. She didn't want calls, didn't want check-ins, didn't want any interruption to whatever she'd lined up for these 10 days. Most men would have pushed back, negotiated for daily updates, tried to salvage something. Not me. "Absolutely," I agreed without hesitation. "No contact, 10 days start now." She left looking more unsettled than relieved. I could picture her texting her friend before even reaching the car. "He took it too well. Something's off." The shift in the house was immediate. It didn't feel empty, it felt free. For months, I'd been tiptoeing around her moods, trying to patch what was already beyond repair, working to hold on to someone whose mind was elsewhere. Now I could think clearly. That night, I did what any man with foresight would do. I started keeping records. Screenshots of our recent messages. Photos of the house exactly as she left it. Statements for joint accounts and shared assets. If she wanted to play games, I'd be holding the receipts. By the second day, I had a new rhythm. One that didn't revolve around her criticisms, her discontent, or her constant demand for reassurance. I went to the gym, reconnected with friends I'd been neglecting, and enjoyed walking into a home that felt like mine again. Then the message came that changed everything. I wasn't scrolling through her accounts. I'm not that desperate. But when a mutual friend sent me a screenshot with the note, "Dude, you need to see this," I knew our so-called break had just shifted into something else entirely. There she was, big smile, fresh outfit, arm draped around a guy I didn't recognize. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to step away to see what happiness really looks like." Hashtags, new beginnings and living my truth. 2 days into our marriage, pause, and she was already showing off her replacement. Most men would have been crushed, blindsided, maybe even in shock. Not me. What I felt was far more dangerous. I felt clarity. Sharp, unshakable clarity about exactly who I'd married and exactly what kind of game she'd been running. She wanted to celebrate new beginnings. Perfect. I was about to give her one she'd never forget. The screenshot sat on my phone like a piece of evidence in a case I'd already started building. 4 years into our marriage, I saw her, glowing in a way I hadn't witnessed for months, leaning close to a tall, dark-haired man inside what appeared to be an upscale restaurant. Her palm rested lightly against his chest. His arm encircled her waist, and together they looked straight into the camera with the polished ease of a couple posing for engagement photos. What hit me hardest wasn't only the picture, it was the timestamp. 6 hours old. On the second day of what she'd labeled our period of reflection, she was already out in public with another man, playing the part of a long-established partner. My phone vibrated again, same friend. More pictures, they wrote. She's been posting all day. I began scrolling, taking my time as I absorbed each image in sequence. Morning, 9 a.m. A coffee shop shot, her leaning into him with an easy familiarity. By noon, arms weighed down with shopping bags, fingers laced together. Evening, 7 p.m., a romantic dinner lit by candlelight. In less than a day, she'd staged the entire progression of a relationship. The comment section told its own story. Her single friends flooded her posts with fire emojis and "you deserve this." Her relatives, on the other hand, were noticeably silent. Then one reply stopped me cold. From a downtown friend, "About time you chose yourself. He looks perfect for you." About time. Perfect for you. This wasn't some impulsive fling. It was the man she had been grooming for the role while she was still wearing my wedding band. I put the phone down as the reality locked into place. Her so-called break wasn't meant for salvaging our marriage. It was a grace period to transition her hidden relationship into the open without inviting the word affair. 10 days wasn't for reflection. 10 days was her countdown to roll out the new boyfriend on Instagram while clinging to plausible deniability. We were on a break. That would be her shield. Cold, calculated, and I had to admit, tactical. But she had underestimated one thing: I don't audition for the role of the oblivious victim. I opened my laptop. People get sloppy with their privacy settings, and social media is a goldmine when they do. Within 30 minutes, I had his profile in full. Name, job, relationship history, even his address. And predictably, Mr. Perfect came with his own paper trail, recently divorced, with a habit of overlapping relationships so well documented by his ex-wife that it was part of their public court record. Her taste was consistent. She'd picked someone cut from the same cloth as herself. The deeper I dug, the clearer the pattern became. Those late-night calls, not work. Those sudden errands, not grocery runs. Her so-called downtown friend wasn't merely offering her a place to stay, she was helping hide the affair. By midnight, I had everything bundled. Screenshots, timestamps, photos, placing them together well before the break began. But simply dumping it all online felt blunt and unimaginative. I wanted her to be the architect of her own collapse. The next morning, she handed me more material. Sunrise beach selfies, a breakfast for two spread, a leisurely walk down the street with our dog. Each new image weakened her cover story. Every self-growth caption layered on another lie. Each friend's cheering comment tied them into the deception. And then the quiet shift began. Former co-workers, mutual acquaintances, even relatives started dropping pointed, careful questions in her comments. The timeline didn't add up, and people were connecting the dots. By day 3, my dining room resembled a command post. Documents, photographs, redundant backups across 3 devices. Everything organized toward a plan that would make her 10-day rollout worthless. She assumed she could control the narrative, but a story only works when you control all the characters. She'd forgotten I still had access to our joint accounts, our shared property, and, most importantly, the house. The same house holding the rest of her possessions. The same house she would have to face if she wanted them back. The same house that was about to host the most public reckoning she'd ever experienced. I began in the bedroom. One by one, I cleared her closet. Designer dresses charged to our joint card, jewelry I'd given her to mark anniversaries, the wedding albums she apparently no longer remembered. Each item went into a box. The boxes sat in perfect rows, each one labeled in tidy, legible handwriting, the words spelling out what was left of a marriage she seemed intent on erasing, as if it had never held any significance at all. But I hadn't packed these for safekeeping. They were prepared for display. By the fourth day, the weather turned, rain tapping against the garage roof, a fitting atmosphere for the move I was about to make. Inside, the stack stood in disciplined formation, tagged with a kind of detached precision. Clothing, designer. Personal items, sentimental. Wedding photos, evidence. Every piece she would need to slide seamlessly into her carefully crafted new life. I had arranged it all with more efficiency than she had ever managed herself. But neatness wasn't the purpose here. Education was. The night before, I had drafted a social media update, measured, stripped of venom, but loaded with fact. The kind of post that stops a person mid-scroll, forcing them to see familiar images through a completely different lens. The kind that transforms every cheerful snapshot she had been sharing into something more revealing. Her most recent post showed the two of them at an art exhibit, her wearing the dress I'd given her last Christmas, him playing the part of the sophisticated partner. The caption gushed about new perspectives and authentic living. 47 likes so far, mostly from people with no idea they were applauding an affair. My phone had been buzzing all day. Friends sent screenshots, checked in on me, and circled around the real question, wanting the truth. I answered them all the same way. Thanks for asking, I'm fine. The truth has a way of surfacing. That became my refrain, not loud enough to drip bitterness, but sharp enough to plant doubt. And doubt began to spread. People started combing through her posts, matching up dates, spotting patterns. The breakthrough came when her cousin called. I don't want to get dragged into this, he said, but the timeline doesn't add up. She says you two split weeks ago, yet I saw you having dinner just last Sunday. Exactly the opening I needed. I didn't have to expose her lies, she was doing it herself. By Thursday afternoon, it was time for phase 2. The truck was loaded, not just with the labeled boxes, but also with the bigger things she had left behind. The exercise bike she barely used. The overpriced coffee maker she insisted was essential. The decorative pillows that made our couch impossible to sit on comfortably. I drove to her friend's downtown apartment building, parking directly across from it. Second-floor corner unit, the one she claimed was her temporary home. Her car wasn't there, but his was, a sleek black sedan with vanity plates that screamed midlife crisis. The building's courtyard was neat, well lit, and perfectly visible from the street, an ideal stage. I unloaded methodically, laying everything out in a clean, intentional arrangement along the sidewalk at the main entrance. Front and center I positioned her wedding gown, still sealed in its preservation bag, standing like a pale flag of surrender. But the centerpiece was the sign I had made. Glossy, laminated, weather-resistant. It read, "Free to good home. Items abandoned between day 2 and day 10 of marriage break. Please take what you like." No accusations. No dramatic flourishes. Just a plain statement anyone could interpret however they wanted. I was setting the final box down when my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice came through, urgent. "What are you doing? People are calling me, asking why my things are on the sidewalk. This isn't funny. Call me back now." 3 more calls followed, each more desperate than the last. I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped back and took a wide shot of the entire display. The boxes, the sign, the wedding dress catching the dim afternoon light. It looked like something from a modern art gallery, a commentary on how fragile relationships can be. Which in its own way it was. At exactly 5 p.m., prime engagement hour, I posted the photo online. The caption was crafted from her own words, her hashtags, her carefully managed timeline. The reaction hit instantly. Comments and shares multiplied by the minute. Friends tagged each other, hinting at what they already suspected. Family members who had stayed quiet on her feed found their voices on mine. Old co-workers who knew the real sequence of events began piecing it together for everyone else. The most satisfying part was watching her panic in real time, deleting comments, altering captions, and even wiping entire posts in a frantic attempt to rewrite the past. The damage was already irreversible. Screenshots don't vanish, and by now, others had already pieced the puzzle together. One of her friends called me directly. This time, I answered. "You need to pick this stuff up right now," she demanded. "It's becoming a problem for everyone in the building." "I'm not responsible for abandoned property," I said, keeping my tone even. "She asked for space, so I'm giving her all the space she could ever want." "She says it's harassment," the friend shot back. "I call it generosity," I replied. I could have charged her for storage. By evening, the display on the sidewalk had become a full-blown spectacle. Neighbors stopping to stare, pedestrians slowing their pace, and, inevitably, people who knew exactly who it all belonged to. My phone lit up with messages from acquaintances who had driven by just to see it in person. Before long, photos started circulating online from every possible angle, each one fueling the growing story. Rain began falling just before midnight. For a brief moment, I wondered if I should feel guilty about leaving her belongings exposed to the weather. Then I remembered the timestamp on that first photo of her with her new boyfriend, and decided that some things deserved to get drenched. Friday brought the true consequences. The rain had destroyed several boxes, reducing what was once her coveted wardrobe into the equivalent of a luxury thrift store giveaway. Even her wedding dress, sealed in its preservation bag, now carried a dark water stain along the hem that looked eerily like tear marks. The symbolism wasn't lost on me, but the real destruction wasn't in the fabric or the cardboard. It was in the collapse of her carefully curated online image. My earlier post had spread, not to the entire internet, but in a way that mattered far more, the intimate, inescapable gossip network of a small town. Now every mutual acquaintance, distant relative, and casual friend had front-row seats to her unraveling. The comments section read like a joint investigation, people lining up dates, swapping screenshots, and connecting dots she'd never wanted connected. Her attempt to regain control only made things worse. She posted a long, self-justifying message about privacy and misunderstandings, but it rang hollow against the sheer weight of visible evidence. When you've been caught lying, every extra word is just another lie to maintain. The most satisfying part was seeing her boyfriend's reaction play out for everyone to witness. By Tuesday, his account had gone silent. No fresh couple photos, no sweet captions, nothing. Either he was smarter than I'd given him credit for, or he'd finally realized he was the leading man in someone else's false narrative. By midday, I had my answer. Her car was back in the lot. His was gone. The sidewalk display had been hastily dismantled, evidence of panic in every torn bag, soaked box, and scattered belonging. A rushed salvage job, far too late to matter. Now my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Her friends, even her mother, all insisting we talk about this like adults. I ignored them all. The time for talking ended the moment she treated our marriage break as an audition for her next partner. Instead, I spent the day documenting the wreckage, screenshots of deleted posts, cached versions of edited captions, and photos sent to me of the courtyard after her frantic cleanup. This was social media-era evidence collection. The real shift came when her sister called. I answered this one. "I need you to know," she began without pleasantries. "Not all of us knew what she was doing. When I saw those pictures with that man, I thought you two had been apart for weeks. She told everyone you'd been having problems for months." "Is that right?" I said. "What else did she tell people?" For the next 20 minutes, I got a full inventory of the lies my wife had spread to justify her actions. In her rewritten version of events, I was emotionally distant, financially controlling, and the one who wanted the separation. She'd cast herself as the brave heroine of a broken marriage, finally choosing her own happiness. But elaborate lies require every actor to stay in character, and I had never agreed to play the part of the inattentive husband. "She's been setting this up for at least 2 months, her sister went on. "The downtown friend, the shopping spree, even that guy, she met him at some networking thing and they've been talking ever since." 2 months. While I was trying to mend our marriage, she was lining up my replacement. "Why tell me this?" I asked. "Because what she did was wrong," she said, "and because everyone deserves to know the truth." The truth. Imagine that. That night I made one final post. No anger, no venom, just facts. A short, precise timeline with dates, events, and publicly visible proof. Her request for a break. The order of her posts. Evidence showing her new relationship had begun months before our separation. I ended it with one line. Sometimes the best way to save a marriage is to discover it's already over. The response was instant. Friends who had stayed silent until now suddenly spoke up. Relatives who had once chosen silence suddenly found their voices. Even former colleagues began volunteering their own accounts of similar patterns. Yet the most satisfying contribution came from his ex-wife, who left a comment containing just 8 words. Same playbook, different victim, good luck. It turned out this wasn't the first time he had swept in to rescue an unhappy wife. This was his signature move, and now everyone knew it. By nightfall, her social media accounts had been locked down. By the next morning, they had disappeared entirely. Their carefully staged romance had been erased from view, but the internet has a long memory. Screenshots remain. And more importantly, the facts were no longer up for debate. Not my account, not her version, just a verifiable timeline anyone could check for themselves. Saturday morning brought only stillness. No calls, no texts, no frantic attempts to explain or do damage control. Just silence, and the sound of consequences arriving right on schedule. I made coffee in the quiet of my kitchen and checked my phone one final time. Her newest post, now visible only to her close friends, contained a single line. Some bridges burned themselves. I couldn't have worded it better. By Sunday afternoon, she finally returned. I heard the car door slam before she appeared, sharp and deliberate, the same way she used to when irritated over something petty like an undone chore or a late dinner. This time, though, her anger had nothing to do with dishes or schedules. It was about the fallout. She lingered on the porch for a full minute before unlocking the door. Perhaps she was rehearsing her speech, summoning her courage, or silently wishing I wouldn't be inside. But I was exactly where I belonged, sitting at home with coffee in hand, reading as if nothing had changed. Because for me, nothing had. I'd simply stopped pretending. The door opened slowly, almost with theatrical weight. She stepped inside like someone walking into an ambush, which in truth wasn't far from reality. Her movements were deliberate, each step taken as though testing the air, gauging my mood before committing to her next line. "We need to talk," she said from the threshold. Without lifting my eyes from the page, I asked, "Do we?" "Don't be childish. This whole social media thing has gone too far." Childish. An interesting word coming from someone who had documented her affair online like a teenager in the throes of a first crush. "I'm not sure what you mean," I replied, turning another page. "I thought we agreed. No contact during your reflection period." She moved closer, discarding caution for a direct strike. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. Dumping my things on the street like that, it's humiliating." "For whom?" I asked. "For both of us. People are talking, my family's asking questions. My friends think you've lost it." I looked up then, meeting her gaze with the composure of someone who knew he held all the leverage. "Your friends think I've lost it because I gave you exactly what you requested? That's fascinating." She sank onto the couch, near enough to suggest openness, but far enough to retreat if necessary. A classic positioning tactic. "Look, I know it looks bad, but you don't understand the whole story." "Then enlighten me," I said. The break wasn't about him, it was about us, about figuring out what we both wanted. And yes, I met someone during that time, but it wasn't intentional. I set my book aside and gave her my full attention. 2 months. Her eyes narrowed. "What? You've been talking to him for 2 months. Your sister confirmed it yesterday when she called to apologize on your behalf." The color drained from her face. She clearly hadn't anticipated that her own family might become collateral damage, or that lying often forces others to lie alongside you. "My sister doesn't know what she's talking about. She has screenshots," I said evenly. "Plenty of them. Seems you've been sharing details about your new romance longer than you've been pretending our marriage was falling apart." She rose and began pacing, her polished exterior starting to crack. "This is ridiculous. I came here to have an adult discussion about moving forward, and you're throwing accusations based on gossip." "Moving forward," I repeated. "Interesting phrase. What exactly does that entail for you?" We could try counseling, work through our issues, give us a real chance instead of playing these games. There it was, the pivot. There's a particular shift in tone that happens when the cheater tries to rebrand themselves as the wronged party, when their reckless decisions suddenly become shared challenges, and their affair morphs into a relationship hurdle we're both supposed to work on together. What challenges exactly? I asked. Spell them out. She launched into what was clearly a rehearsed monologue, talking about our supposed communication breakdowns, how we'd grown emotionally distant, and how our long-term visions for life no longer aligned. On paper, it all sounded plausible. In reality, it was pure fiction, manufactured specifically for this conversation. Our communication hadn't been an issue when she'd called me for help moving her things into storage for her so-called 10-day thinking period. So, let me get this straight, I cut in. Our marriage was riddled with problems, but instead of bringing them to me, you took them to him, for 2 months, while mapping out your getaway plan and locking in your replacement. That's not how it happened. Oh? Then how was it? It's complicated. Complicated? I echoed. You know what isn't complicated? Honesty, respect, basic decency. I leaned in slightly. And you know what else isn't complicated? The fact that you're still wearing your wedding ring while asking me to fight for a role that's already been given to someone else. She glanced down at her hand, as though only just realizing the ring was there. Maybe she truly had forgotten. Or maybe it had simply become part of her, as invisible to her as the marriage it represented had become to both of us. I never meant for things to unfold like this, she said quietly. But they did, I replied. And now you expect me to pretend they didn't, so you can keep me as your safety net in case Plan A falls apart. That's not what this is, she protested. Then what is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you made your choice and just don't want to deal with the fallout. She lowered herself back into her seat, tears starting to collect in her eyes. Whether they were genuine or just another act, I no longer had the energy or the interest to find out. It didn't matter anymore. I made a mistake, she whispered. A horrible mistake. But it doesn't have to destroy everything. You're right, I said evenly. Your mistake doesn't have to destroy everything, but it did destroy this. I rose from my chair and crossed to the window overlooking the driveway. Her car was parked behind mine, blocking me in. Even in this moment, she was still trying to control the circumstances. You need to move your car, I told her, not bothering to turn around. I have plans tonight. What kind of plans? I turned back to meet her eyes one last time. The kind that don't require your permission, your advice, or your company. The kind of plans free people make. 3 months later, I saw her again, by accident, in the grocery store. She was alone, and something about her seemed diminished, like whatever borrowed confidence her affair had once given her had worn off the same way the relationship had. Gone were the high-end clothes. In their place were practical, budget-friendly outfits that spoke of living within the limits of one income. The polished glow she'd shown off in those early Instagram posts had dulled into something that looked suspiciously like regret. She spotted me first, freezing mid-step in the cereal aisle, as though she'd been caught slipping something into her bag. I gave a polite nod and kept moving. No scene, no need for a cutting remark, no performance for anyone. The necessary damage had already been done long ago. You look good, she said as I walked past her cart. I did look good. 3 months of putting my energy into myself instead of into managing someone else's chaos will do that. I didn't return the compliment. I wasn't in the business of making liars feel better about themselves. How have you been? She asked. Fantastic, I answered honestly. And you? She glanced at her cart, stocked with generic brands and single-serving meals. Getting by. Those 2 words told me more than any confession could. Her Prince Charming had proven to be exactly as disappointing as anyone could have predicted. The downtown friend who'd once provided her cover had lost patience with enabling bad behavior. Even the relatives who had initially believed her sob story had stepped quietly back after seeing the truth for themselves. Choices always come with consequences. Always. I heard you're seeing someone new, she said, trying to pry. I'm living my life, I corrected her. That's what free people do. By then, the divorce had been final for 2 weeks. It had been quick, clean, and far less dramatic than the chaos she'd tried to engineer through her lawyer. It's hard to sustain a victim narrative when there's a digital archive of your own choices for the world to see. She kept a single friend downtown. I kept the house. She kept her so-called new beginning. I held on to my self-respect. A fair trade in my book. I just want you to know I'm sorry, she said. Sorry it didn't turn out the way you planned, I asked. That's not what I meant. It's precisely what you told me 3 months ago, back when you were convinced you'd found a better option. Now that it's fallen apart, you're only sorry about how you handled it, not about making the choice in the first place. Her mouth opened as if she was about to push back, but she stopped herself. Good. She was finally beginning to understand the value of keeping quiet. The truth is, I went on, I'm not sorry, not anymore. You saved me the trouble of learning the hard way who you really are, and you did it before I invested more years into a losing cause. I moved past her cart toward the checkout, then paused just long enough to add, and by the way, your 10-day break ended up lasting exactly as long as your little fling with him. Funny how that worked out. That night, I joined friends at the same restaurant where she'd once posted her first photo with her so-called upgrade. Different table, different company, completely different energy. These were people who valued me without requiring constant validation. People who showed up without needing to make some grand exit to prove their independence. You seem different, one of them said, more relaxed. I am, I replied. Life gets a lot easier when you stop trying to repair people who have no interest in being repaired. While we talked, my phone buzzed with a text from the woman I'd been seeing for the last month. Nothing overdone, nothing needy, just a simple, hope you're enjoying your night with your friends. A message from someone confident enough to give space, who respected my time because she respected her own. That's what healthy looks like. Conversations without drama, care without clinging, and something real built quietly instead of staged for social media applause. The discussion at our table drifted naturally between work updates, sports recaps, and travel plans. Ordinary topics. No tiptoeing around moods, no managing emotional storms. It hit me how absent all of this had been during those last, strained months of trying to revive something that had already died. Later, I sat on my back deck with a beer, looking at the empty space where her workout gear used to clutter the patio. The yard felt larger now, cleaner, just like the rest of my life. 3 missed calls from an unfamiliar number flashed on my phone. Probably her, trying to continue our earlier grocery store exchange. I deleted the notifications without listening. Some conversations aren't worth completing. The house was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that feels empty. Chosen silence is different from the silence forced on you. The gap between solitude and loneliness is control, the ability to choose who gets to be in your space, rather than having that choice taken from you. 6 months from now, she might reach out again, maybe during the holidays, maybe on what used to be our anniversary, or maybe at the moment her decisions finally felt too heavy to carry alone. That's how it goes. People convince themselves that burning bridges will make the road ahead easier until they realize it doesn't. I finished my beer and went inside, locking the door behind me. Tomorrow would bring fresh opportunities, new experiences, and people who understood that respect is not optional and that trust, once broken, is gone for good. Tonight, I was exactly where I belonged, on my own terms, on my own ground, accountable only to someone who had earned that right. That someone was me. And for the first time in years, that was more than enough.